Testimony resumed today in Sean Combs' federal racketeering and sex trafficking trial. Dawn Richard, a former member of a girl group formed by Combs, was back on the stand. Cassie Ventura's former best friend, Carrie Morgan, also testified, and the day ended when one of Sean Combs' former assistants took the stand. CNN's Kara Scannell, who has been in court from the very beginning, joins us now. What were some of the key moments in testimony today?
So a lot of the testimony was focused on the physical assaults that Dawn Richard and Carrie Morgan said that they witnessed firsthand. Richard said that she'd seen a number of assaults, him kicking her, smacking her, and Morgan described in great detail 2 assaults. One was in Jamaica when they were on vacation. She testified that they were at a bar. Ventura went to the bathroom. Combs thought she was taking too long. And then Morgan said the next thing she heard was guttural screams that was from Ventura. She went to the hallway, saw Combs dragging her down the hallway by her hair. She said then they went outside and she saw Combs push Ventura to the ground. Ventura hit her head on the brick floor and she thought Ventura was passed out. She said Morgan was arguing with Combs. Ventura got up and ran into the woods. And Morgan eventually found Ventura and they were hiding in a ditch while Combs and another friend was looking for them. So that was the most vivid testimony of the day. There was also testimony just about the control aspect of this, which both Morgan, Richard, and Combs' assistant, David James, testified that they had conversations with Ventura and she said she couldn't leave because Combs was in charge of her career, of her finances, her car, her apartment. And so that was testimony that the jury heard really for the first time today, something that specific.
So how does this correspond to the testimony we heard in really dramatic fashion from Cassie Ventura? And how do you think that the prosecution wants jurors to hear this in terms of what it means to the actual charges that Combs is facing? So
these jurors are backing up what Ventura said about a violent relationship. They can't tie it to the freak-offs, which is part of the sex trafficking charge, but they are providing additional examples and, in Morgan's case, corroborating what Ventura had already told the jury about following the hotel surveillance video fight that was captured and what happened back at her apartment, where Morgan testified today Combs showed up with a hammer, was banging on the door. She said she was terrified, and she said Ventura was sitting on the couch numb, as though she didn't care if Combs even broke in and killed her. So they're providing additional context. The other thing, hearing from this personal assistant of Combs, he's testifying both about the Cassie and the sex trafficking. One thing he said he overheard was Combs saying, "I got her right where I want her. She's young, very moldable," of Ventura. And then also testifying about when he was interviewing for the job, he met with someone from HR, and the HR woman pointed to a picture of Combs on the wall, and it said, "This is Mr. Combs' kingdom. We're all here to serve him." This witness choked up when he was recounting that testimony, and this is where I think prosecutors want to get to the racketeering charge as well, just that this was an enterprise of people. Combs was in charge of his security detail, his assistants, and people looked the other way when there was abuse happening before them.
All right, Kara Scannell, as I said, you're in the court each and every day. Thank you so much for telling us what you see and hear.
Another day of testimony is just wrapped up in the sex trafficking trial of Sean Diddy Combs. I want to bring in CNN correspondent Kara Scannell. She's live outside the federal courthouse in New York. And we're also joined by CNN legal analyst Elliot Williams. Kara, let me start with you. What did we hear today? I mean, a lot of what we're looking at, I mean, it's really graphic and awful.
Yeah, Casey, the jury heard additional testimony today about physical violence that these witnesses said they saw Sean Combs do to Cassie Ventura. One witness who testified today was Carrie Morgan, Ventura's best friend of 17 years. She was friends with Ventura before she started dating Combs, and throughout most of their relationship, she testified about several incidences of violence. One, she said that they were in Jamaica sitting at a bar and Ventura went to the bathroom. Combs said she was taking too long. Then Morgan testified that she heard a guttural scream, had seen Combs dragging Ventura by her hair down a hallway. She said that continued to outside, where she saw Combs throw Ventura to the ground. Ventura's head hit a brick, and Morgan testified she wasn't sure if Ventura was knocked out. She said Ventura did get up, ran to the woods, and they eventually found her, but they were hiding for a while in a ditch, trying to avoid Combs and his associates who were looking for them. She also testified about what occurred after the March 2016 assault that was captured on that hotel's surveillance video. The jury had last week seen photos of some injuries to Ventura's face, and Morgan said that when Ventura returned to her home, Morgan was there. She said that it was that Combs had showed up and was banging on the door with a hammer. Morgan testified that she was terrified. The police ultimately came, but Ventura did not speak to them. She wouldn't identify herself. And she said later that Ventura had not wanted her to talk to the authorities and that Ventura felt like she couldn't leave Combs because he was in control of her career. Now, we also heard today from a personal assistant to Combs who became emotional on the witness stand when he testified about his interview at Bad Boy Records to become his personal assistant. This assistant, David James, testified that he was told by the head of Human Resources that this is Mr. Combs' kingdom and we're all here to serve him. He also testified about an exchange he had with Ventura in which he talked to her about leaving this chaotic, crazy lifestyle, and Ventura told him, James testified, that she couldn't leave because Combs was in charge of her career and her money and her apartment, and so she couldn't leave. He'll be back on the witness stand tomorrow. It was interesting, when he was leaving the courtroom, he looked over at Combs, he nodded at him, and Combs nodded back toward him. This testimony clearly not helpful for Combs' defense. Casey?
Well, and Elliot Williams, to that point, I mean, why is this all such a focus? It seems to be that they need to prove that this was against her will in order to prove sex trafficking, because we saw those opening statements where the defense basically said, well, domestic violence is not sex trafficking. What are your takeaways from what we learned today?
And Casey, you just beautifully laid out what the law on sex trafficking is. Look, no one disputes, and I don't think Sean Combs would dispute, the existence of these sex acts and somewhat, let's say, avant-garde sex parties that took place. Now, the question is, for what he's been charged with, you would have to show some level of force, fraud, or coercion in getting people to participate in them. And what you're seeing here, at least what the prosecutors are attempting to put on, is establishing a pattern of not just acts, but acts of force that led to the acts. And what's not helping Sean Combs is that what seems like every time he gets a useful piece of evidence, there's a countervailing piece of evidence of him beating up the person who gave it. There was testimony today about whether Cassie and the other, Carrie Morgan is the name, voluntarily went on trips. Well, there's also evidence that he beat both of them, one of them with a coat hanger. This is certainly not useful evidence for a defendant who is attempting to undermine these questions of whether he used force, fraud, or coercion to get people to go along with his behavior.
Yeah, really awful. All right, Kara Scannell, Elliot Williams, thank you both very much for being here.